Welcome to the Midland Money Mindset. This is a podcast that's all about getting your mind right when it comes to all things money. In every episode, we go deep with engaging guests who provide tangible takeaways and a whole lot of joy along the way. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I enjoyed having them. Let's dive into today's show. Well, I have the pleasure today of being with Preston Holland, Chief Commercial Officer at Flying Finance. I can't wait to have this conversation and share it with you all. And, hopefully you're traveling a lot. Those people that follow me see me on airplanes quite a bit. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, and welcome to the show, Preston.
Larry, I appreciate you having me. This is really exciting. I'm really excited to talk to you and talk to your audience about maybe seeing a different, seeing the air through a different view.
Listen, I'm interested. You got me because, like I said, as my listeners know, I'm on a plane quite often. I have one son in Philly and one son right now who's finishing up in Minnesota. So we're out in the Midwest quite a bit. So, before we jump in and talk about Flying Finance, which we're going to spend a good deal of time on, I'm always fascinated, and our listeners are always fascinated with the entrepreneurial journey, right? So maybe you could give us a little background, like how did your entrepreneurial journey start and what brought you to the point of Flying Finance?
Yeah, so in 2021, I was actually GMing a regional service business out of the Southeast. If any of your listeners are in the private equity or in the kind of the roll up space, I was running one of those franchise businesses, a nice service business in the Southeast, right, as a popular target for those folks, and was pretty content. Was running it for a family member. They had asked me to kind of come along and do a turnaround for them. It was kind of my specialty is coming in and turning around existing businesses, and so they had asked me to come in and do a project for them. And we'd reached a point in the journey where we had grown, taken revenue and tripled it. And, the team was growing. It was in a pretty good spot. And I had really no intention of leaving. And when another friend of mine called and told me that he was buying Flying Magazine, actually, of all things, right? So I said, well, why are you buying a magazine? That's something. What are you doing in 2021 buying a magazine? And
Right.
So he said it's going to be fun, come join in. And so I gave up what I was doing then and joined alongside him. We ran a roll-up style of buying publications. We did, 13 transactions in 2 years, led the deal team and really, went aggressively to market. And then we had all these eyeballs, right? We have some 7 million people that see one of our websites in any given month. And so we said, what are we going to do with all these people, right? How are we going to actually help them transact in this marketplace that we're covering in media? And so we acquired a small finance brokerage. And, again, being the turnaround guy that I am, I saw an opportunity for, process improvement and getting in there, kind of rolling my sleeves up and getting down and dirty with it. And so started doing that once we acquired that in 2023, and I've been doing that ever since. It's been a wild journey. We've been growing about 100% month over month since we acquired that business. Really using the media business, which is bringing in a lot of people who know who we are, and then helping facilitate transactions in the private aviation space. Right. So probably when your listeners hear personal aviation, private aviation, they usually have two thoughts. One is Elon Musk flying in a Gulfstream G650ER. And then the other one is, oh, my uncle had an airplane that we went out to the hangar and I sat in the airplane with him and, we took off and it was crazy and we wore a headset and it was loud. And so that is the realm of aviation that we live in. We are not necessarily in the commercial aviation space where you think of, getting on a Delta or an American or United flight. We do have publications that cover that, but my group specifically focuses on, the single engine piston range up through the corporate business jet and anything in between.
Nice. So maybe you could just take us through exactly, I get that's the space, but what does flying finance do within that space? You know, because I think that there are a couple of different angles or areas that you really are experts in. So maybe you could share what those areas are with the listeners.
Yeah, so we help the bottom line is that we help facilitate transactions in the financial space inside of private aviation. So we go to market with a package, and we have a bench of about 100 lenders that we work with. We find that package that works perfectly for that customer. Right, different banks have very tight buy boxes, and they're pretty lackluster in customer service. This. You're in financial services. You understand that a lot of these banks are very transaction oriented. They don't really like going outside of their box or creating anything creative or anything like that, whereas there are some others that will. Right, and so depending on what a client is trying to optimize for, we have some clients that are coming to us looking for the highest advance rate that they can get. They say, look, interest rate, those buyers traditionally have a pretty high hurdle rate, right? So their internal cost of capital is 14%. And they say, go beat 14% for me and get me as much money as you can, right?
Right.
Other clients are saying, hey, we're really trying to optimize cash flow for our business right now. And so, maybe we're trying to find a nice balance between advance rate, LTV, rate, term, things like that. And so we're able to actually meet with the customer, understand what it is their financial goals are with buying the airplane. And then we go to market for them and do a lot of the behind the scenes work, right? Buying an airplane is far more akin to buying a business or like buying a house than it is to
Sure.
like buying a car. You can't just sign your name. And traditionally, the clients that come to us, their bank says, we have no idea about this asset, so
Right.
we don't want to touch it, right? And so
Right.
they say, all right, they're very bankable customers, inherently, right? If you're buying an airplane, you're traditionally, a pretty bankable customer. But their bank that they work with, whether it's a regional bank or a local bank, or even one of the big four banks, right? Maybe their airplane's too small. J.P. Morgan really doesn't pick up the phone for anything less than $30 million, right? And so,
Mhm.
we really fill that gap and help provide a service for the customer and say, look, we're going to take a lot of that headache of going to market with this loan package, and we're saying, hey, let's go find who's going to give us the best rate to optimize for our clients' financial outcome. And so that's really where we add value. In the places that we are not brokers, we're not commercial real estate agents for airplanes. There are those inside of our ecosystem. We work really closely with those folks. A lot of times we're maybe that second or third set of eyes that says, hey, have you thought about a pre-buy inspection? Have you thought about what are you going to do about escrow and things like that? We try and advise our clients and help them understand we're with you along every step along the way. And maybe you haven't picked out your airplane yet. We may give a few pointers and say, hey, you may want to avoid this vintage, right? Or you may want to
Mhm.
avoid this particular make and model based on what we see in the market. But that's kind of our primary thing. We also have some websites that help people buy and sell airplanes. We own aircraftforsale.com and we own avbuyer.com. Those are two of the number one listing sites in the US. And so people actually go on there and they start their process of buying the airplane, see what's on the market, and then we help them actually get to that closed transaction.
Amazing. So, you talked about it earlier, this whole when everybody's talking about digital and saying print's kind of dead, you're in this team that bought Flying Magazine. So, I mean, was it ultimately because that's really where your target market was for this business because they're reading this magazine and they're consuming that content? And I guess I would also ask is there also an online digital version or it's simply hard copy?
Yeah. So our thesis revolved. So we acquired the magazine first, and I'll show you for your YouTube viewers. If you're listening on the podcast version, you should go check it out on YouTube so that you can actually see. But this is one of the last issues of Flying before we purchased it. You can see how thin it is. The paper is lackluster. There's some ads in there that are not necessarily on brand, right? But you think about the private aviation space, and you think about the type of customer that actually flies. They appreciate things of quality. And so this is actually, it's a polybagged version, right?
Yeah.
It's high gloss, high touch, high design. And we said, look, we're going to actually give you a product that you want to read. going into the finance business, and we're actually in the real estate business as well. We might be able to talk about that for a minute or two. Uh, but really, it all centered around this idea that there's a group of people that's very passionate about a particular activity, which is aviation, and it's got a relatively high barrier to entry. This is not, general sports or general news or anything. This is something that is some people are very passionate about, and we're all aviators ourselves. I mean, I'm getting my pilot's license. My dad had his pilot's license. Our CEO owns a few airplanes, small airplanes. Uh, our director of finance, used to fly for the airline. So, we are an office full of aviation people, airplane
Right.
people, and we understand, what this buyer persona actually cares about. And so we said, look, we're going to make a really high quality magazine, and then we're going to create these ancillary businesses around it that actually help support that media model and comes alongside of our advertisers, right? Traditional media is, both subscription and advertiser driven. And so, we said, hey, we're going to come up alongside you. Our subscribers who are paying us for content, we're going to deliver a beautiful mechanism that we deliver it for you. For our advertisers, we're going to create a brand safe environment. And then in the digital environment, right, where we are all digitally native people here, we're
Right.
not necessarily. I look. I
Mhm.
didn't have a single print magazine subscription when I started here at Flying. I have a bunch now, and have actually fallen in love with the form factor. But we also said, look, this group of people is also on digital. And so how do we think about partnering with Apple? So we have a really strong integrated partnership with Apple where we're on Apple News in a really advanced digital environment that feels a lot like print. And it has some of the, you know, a traditional website, you go read a blog, right? And it's a bunch of
Right.
words on a screen. You miss a little bit of that interactivity with the photography and with the design. And so we have an integrated partnership with Apple where we syndicate to Apple News. So Apple News Plus, you can look it up, Flying Magazine. And we have a digital presence, flyingmag.com. And then, look, we've got 28 different sites. So we have websites, coming out of our ears, but we really understand that those web readers oftentimes are, really top of the funnel. They're just starting to discover the print
Right.
product actually takes them to that next level. And here's the other funny thing about print. And this is something, Larry, that we frankly did not expect to happen. We said, look, we're going to kill the print product because, again, who really reads
Right.
print magazines?
Right.
Here's the one thing that we didn't take into consideration. What do you not have while you're flying? Wi-Fi. You don't have
Well,
Wi-Fi or cell
I don't know,
coverage.
that's changing these days, though, depending
It
on the
is.
plane, right? Depends on
It
the
is,
plane.
depending on the plane, but if you're flying your own single engine airplane,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi can
Yeah.
be $10,000 a month, right? And
Yep.
so, traditionally, not something that people are purchasing. So that print product actually does, have a resonance, and aviation has a strong print background. And so we said, look, we're gonna create a beautiful mechanism and a beautiful container for that, and then we're going to strategically distribute to the places, not only to our subscribers, which has a very robust database of subscribers, but also, we distribute to private FBO terminals all across the country. So the next time you're getting onto your private jet, Larry, be sure to pick up a copy of
I'll
Flying when you're
I'll have to
going through
keep my eyes
signature.
open. Yeah. I'll have to keep my So, I mean, when you took on this task with this, with this print magazine, what was it with the understanding that you were gonna build this multimedia empire kind of around it, and that was gonna be the hub of this, venture, really?
Yeah, the idea is basically that the hardest part, and a lot of your listeners probably have either today or sometime this week are going to have a meeting about marketing, and you're going to talk about distribution and how do we get to top of mind share of people. That's the constant evolution of business. What media has baked into that product is you are at the top of mind. And so we said, how do we take this media business? And look, Flying Magazine's been around since 1927. We did not create Flying Magazine. My dad was a subscriber to magazine far before we ever came onto the picture. And so we said, how do we take that and then how do we build interesting businesses around it, right? Media business, frankly, hard way to make money, right? It's a very, you look on the news and it seems like every quarter some new media publication is going through crisis, right?
Mhm.
Whether it was Sports Illustrated a couple of months ago or it's, BuzzFeed last year or you name it, right? Media is a very hard way to make money. So we said, look, we have this captive audience, we have this group of people, very passionate, trusted brand. Now, how do we build interesting ancillary businesses around it that actually serve that audience member and help them do what they love to do, right? Finance being one of them. Our real estate project in Southeast Tennessee is another one, right? We said people love to live by their airplanes, so we're building an airport, a fly-in community in Southeast Tennessee where you can fly your airplane and park it like you would park your car in your garage.
Amazing, amazing. So is that is that the air park? Is that what an air park is? Because I know you've mentioned somewhere along the lines, or I read, I should say, that you've taken basically the equivalent of like $27 million or so in real estate sales for an air park. Can you explain a little bit further what that really is? I mean, I think you might have
Yeah.
kind of glossed the surface there, but I find it very interesting.
Yeah. So, walk back, we announced this project about 2 years ago to the public for pre-sale, and we created a deposit system, right? And so we said, look, we bought 1,800 acres in Southeast Tennessee, and for a myriad of reasons, we are in the perfect location for a project like this. No state income tax. We have really friendly capital gains tax here in Southeast Tennessee. We have a beautiful environment, right? Not super densely populated, yet we are in the middle of everywhere, right? We are a 2 hour flight from, call it 70% of the American population between New York and Charlotte, Atlanta. The Florida Keys is even, is about 2.5 hours away, in a small private airplane. Nashville is, about an hour away. So we are really in the middle of everywhere, right? So we acquired this property and we said, look, we know that people love to live with their airplane. And again, we did not create the concept of an air park. And we call it a fly-in community because the general tendency in an air park is, if one of your listeners has ever been to an air park, you may understand that it's oftentimes, not, the design aesthetic is not tight, and the
Okay.
HOA is not as, stringent as anybody would want it to be. And somebody builds a log cabin in the middle of, a bunch of homes that are, Spanish style, and it's that kind of stuff. And so we're creating a master planned community, and so we're breaking ground this year on that project, and we've collected $27 million of pre-funded deposit. So it's a portion of the purchase price goes towards a refundable deposit, where you then reserve your space. And so we have 130 acres of developable land in the phase one, and then we'll move up the mountainside kind of as we go from there. 4,300-foot runway, which is accessible to anything single pilot operated for the most part, right? That's going to be, Phenom 300, right? This is going to be a very technical, portion. Phenom 300 and
Yeah.
down. Your single engine Cessna 172 can land there up to, call it your smaller business jets. And so what we've really saw that it resonates with the community as well is that we've also designed it to the aviation tends to skew male. It's about 80% male right now, and so we really designed as well for the non-aviation spouse. So we designed activities around, what can my spouse do when we get there? Because for the pilot, you only have to say, "Hey, you can live with your plane," and they're sold, right? They're
Right.
like, where do I put my money down, right? But it's the spouse that says, "Hang on a second, what am I going to do when I get there?" So
Right.
we've
Do you
created.
foresee this as like a year-round place, for people to stay, or is it gonna be like a seasonal thing, you think?
So we see it year round because we have really great weather here in Southeast Tennessee. It really in the winter time it's in the 40s, is 40s and 30s. We may get a week of cold snap, but it's nothing like you guys have up there in the Northeast, right? I've never shoveled snow out of my driveway, right?
You're
To give
lucky,
you a
very
perspective.
lucky.
Yeah, so we see it being year round. There's another air park out in Wyoming called Alpine Air Park, and it is definitely seasonal because they get a lot of snow
Right,
out there.
right.
And so we've actually had a lot of residents that have homes out there that say, I really want something that I can access year round. And so we've solved for that here in Southeast Tennessee. So we see it being probably 30% it'll be primary homes, and then the other 70% it'll be some sort of transitory population. This is the beautiful part about having an airplane is you can be anywhere relatively quickly, right? And so,
Sure.
so that's kind of what we see. But we think we're also creating a hotel on property, so you can actually fly in, stay in the hotel, enjoy the amenities on site, as if you're a resident, but you can stay there temporarily.
Yeah, I guess none of the residents are going to be complaining about the noise from overhead flights, right? Because it's expected.
They're actually excited about it. They're like, I foresee there being a lot of observation towers built into homes so that they can, sit up there with a glass of wine and
Right.
watch airplanes fly in.
There
So
you go. There you go. So, one of the shifts over the past few years, especially, and I think it continues to accelerate, has been the building of communities, right? And it seems like you almost have this embedded community within, those that own aircraft. But, how are you utilizing and implementing that strategy to your benefit to build that community and sense thereof?
yeah, we think, look, our pro forma called for us to be about a quarter of the way to where we are right now based off of pre-deposits. I think that there is this desire inside of this community, inside of the aviation community, right, which is small. It's a, the group of pilots and the people ancillary to the pilots, spouses and kids, not a huge amount of people, right, but there is a demand for this product. We find that people want to be near like-minded people, and have a shared bond in what it is that they do, which is their activity. Right, aviation for a lot of people who own airplanes and are pilots, it is a part of their identity. They say, hi, my name is Preston. Oh, and I'm a pilot. Right. The joke is, how long does it take to find how do you count how many pilots there are in the room? Don't worry, they'll tell you, right?
Right.
And so, it's a group of people that's really passionate about that, but they also desire this kind of self-contained community where, look, I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to go outside of, call it the four walls of my community. We'll have a grocery store on site, so they don't have to go off for basic groceries and things like that. And it's really resonated with our audience and with the community even further. We knew that it was going to be a success just because, we had a good hunch about it, but it's far exceeded our expectations as far as, the type of uptake that we've had.
Yeah. So, I mean, how has this been for you? I mean, you transitioned out of a, similar but different universe and transitioned into the chief commercial officer of flying finance. How has that transition been for you?
So for me, I have really enjoyed being able to help one on one on kind of the micro level. I think that in the media space is really great, but you have to really look at the industry from a macro perspective, right? We're writing content and having conversations with OEMs and with brokers who are trying to reach a large audience of people. So kind of your decision making skills and how you're thinking about the world is much more on a micro or on a macro level, right? So you're thinking, okay, what are industry trends, and how am I thinking about, how the entire industry is thinking about a particular topic. Whereas once I transitioned into this role, it's really been more of a one-on-one. So I'm having conversations with individuals on a daily basis, right? Whether it's text or phone call or email, somebody actually purchasing an airplane, getting to gauge, where's the temperature right now in the market? What are people feeling? What are people thinking? How am I helping solve their problems? And then how am I helping my team also take a lot of that knowledge, and then, push that out into the community. I think it's been a great transition for me. I've really enjoyed it. It's more in my wheelhouse to be kind of in the deal making side as opposed to kind of the general commentary side. So I've really enjoyed it. I think that I think our team has really made some big growth, has done some big growth in the last year, and I'm excited to see where we continue to go.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been amazing. So, listen, I'm going to take a shift for a minute because I think that the next couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, it kind of is on everybody's mind, and especially those who are flying frequently, may not be a pilot, but what do you think is the biggest misconception about flying private? I'm sure there are a lot of misconceptions, but what do you think is one of the biggest?
I think the biggest one is that it's less safe than flying commercial. And let me tell you why. when you hear in the news about a general aviation crash, it makes the news. What you don't hear every day is the millions of hours that get flown around the world incident free, right? You take NetJets, for instance. If you listen to the NetJets annual meeting from last year, Warren Buffett is talking about how NetJets is a beautiful business, right? And it's a great business because it's got a captive audience. It's a group of people that it's the last thing they want to give up. NetJets has never had a fatal incident in its entire history, right? A lot of the incidents that you hear about that turn fatal, right, are very old, poorly maintained airplanes that frankly shouldn't be flying anyways, right? And the FAA has strict standards for flying private, but at the end of the day, yes, it is a risk. But when you look at on a percentage basis, business aviation flights that take place, especially in what's considered a professional cockpit, which is two pilots with a professionally managed aircraft, the incident rate is incredibly low. You are I'm not going to say that you're 100% safe because frankly you're never 100%
Right.
safe doing anything, but you have far more risk driving to the airport than you do getting on your business jet. And so but the media and kind of the general perception is, okay, well, we hear about these crashes all the time. You don't really, right? You just remember those ones. And also, a lot of times there is, there is 1,000 steps, and you can go read the NTSB reports. I mean, there's public data about what went wrong in those situations, and a lot of times it is not a situation that you would ever put yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, some of those I've seen certain situations. I think, looking back at like the crash with Kobe Bryant, for example, they shouldn't have been flying, right? The
Right.
weather was a factor, and the pilot didn't want to fly, and you know that allegedly they flew anyway. That's kind of the allegation. So, I mean, you have those incidences too, because it could just be simply weather, and somebody pushed the envelope too far, and it may not even
Right.
be the plane itself, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And so, look, it's a safe activity. It's and there's a ton of studies that are out there. You can do research if you get call it 1 degree below the shocking if it bleeds it leads headlines.
right, right,
Private aviation, specifically in that two pilot crewed missions, is incredibly safe. I think that's one. The other one, and this is a little bit more lighthearted, right? There tends to be this trend on TikTok, which I don't know if you're on TikTok, Larry, but my wife
our
mentioned.
firm is not. I am, because I have to be able to watch some of these funny videos that my kids send me, so I watch
Exactly,
them. But
exactly.
at this juncture, our firm's not allowed to be on there because there's archiving issues. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
look, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't personally post on TikTok, but people send them to me all the time. Me personally, I'm a Twitter guy. I'm on Twitter X now. That's where I'm at. But people will send me these videos all the time, and it's incredibly comical. I have a newsletter that I write once a week, and one of my most popular issues is called "You Can't House Hack a Jet." And if you're familiar with the bigger pockets concept, right? Of all right, you're going to buy a duplex, you're in your 20s, and you're going to live in one half and rent out the other half, and you're going to live for free, right? They call it
Right.
house hacking. You cannot do that in an airplane. Yet there is a contingent of TikTok creators and Instagram creators specifically that will say, let me show you how I fly in my jet for free, right? And they say, I charter it out and then I fly X amount of hours for free. The math does not make sense. It is mathematically impossible to fly for free. It is an expensive activity.
Right.
Now, it is also an expensive activity for some people not to fly private because of the productivity that it unlocks. But if you look dollars and cents wise, it is not possible for you to fly for free, regardless of how many different ways that you depreciate things and do tricky math and things like that. Yet all of these folks on social media are saying, "Oh, check out my private jet that I'm flying on for free." It's not true.
Yeah.
And no matter how many ways you spin it, it's not true. It's a more comical misconception that I see out there a lot.
I mean, I would imagine you can use it as a tool to potentially offset some of the costs, but you're never going to mitigate all of the costs because
Exactly.
it's virtually impossible to do that.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly, exactly. And I mean, look, you have you have a depreciating asset, right? You have something that has a high level of fixed cost. I mean, look, it's
Yeah.
jets are going to cost you between 80 and 150,000 to almost upwards of $1 million a year just to own it, right? That is not until once you fly it, it starts costing more money. You can offset some of those fixed costs by chartering and making a margin spread over top of what you charter it for, but you're not going to be able to make so much margin.
Right.
I did the math on a plane. I had a friend, follower on Twitter, send me a DM and say, "Hey, this is the airplane. Like, I want to, see if I can fly it for free." I said, "You have to fly the airplane 1,800 hours a year to fly that thing for free. There is not an airplane. There's not a private aviation airplane in this world that flies 1,800 hours a year.
Right.
It's just not possible." So that's
Yeah.
another. It's a funny misconception, but I think that it's you know people are looking for what's the answer for me to fly private. The answer is you have to have a certain level of income
Hmm.
and be able to offset it against business expenses and make the justification for yourself.
Okay. Well, let's go into that for a second because your Twitter bio, since you mentioned Twitter, I still have it as Twitter's, but it is X, says sign up for my newsletter where I'll teach you how to fly private, right? So, what is one tip you would give our listeners about flying private that could potentially make it less of a hurdle for them?
Yeah, my number one tip for people when they come to me, especially if they're just starting out, right? And look, the journey of private aviation traditionally looks like this. Somebody starts chartering an airplane for whatever XYZ reason, and there's a business expense right off there. This is not tax advice. This is not financial advice. All of those good disclaimers that come with it, but they see it as a business expense, and they say, okay, I'm going to charter 2 or 3 times. Maybe they start chartering around. Then their next step is sign up for a jet card, right? They a Wheels Up or a Sentient Jet or XYZ. Name your jet card here. Sign
Right.
up for that. They fly on a few different airplanes, and they realize, man, on a per hour basis, this is actually very expensive. And it is. It is. Chartering is the most expensive way to fly an airplane, but charter is a great tool because you can figure out what type of airplane that you actually like to fly on or that
Right.
fits your mission profile. So the number one thing that I tell people is before you get into private aviation, sit down and determine where am I going? How fast do I want to get there? And how many people am I going to bring with me? And once you figure that part out, you can start exploring the world of private aviation. Because if you have, let's say in your business, Larry, I don't know, let's say you have 6 other people that you're trying to fly with. So you have a total of 7 passengers. Well, you've just eliminated, 30% of airplanes. You
Right.
cannot fit 7 people on, X amount of percent of airplanes. And let's say you're trying to go and you're going to go to Minnesota for the next basketball game or the next football game or baseball game. You take 7 people. Well, you're not going to fly an airplane, that necessarily can make a 600-mile trip. That's once you get to 7 people, you can start going farther. But
Yeah.
it also probably doesn't make sense for you to be flying a G650 like Elon Musk, right? That's a lot of airplane for that
Right.
trip, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna pay a lot. You're gonna pay $12,000 an hour to fly a G650. I mean, there's no getting around that. And so you're matching your mission profile with the actual airplane. And now, once you figure that part out, whether you say, I'm trying to go cross country, or I don't really care to go cross country, I want to go to Dallas, that's as far as I need to go, right? Once you determine your airplane, then we can figure out, okay, how often are you flying? What's the correct should you own? Should you charter? Should you own a fraction? Right?
Right.
You can buy a percentage of the airplane and get access to it. Should you have a partnership? Right? Should you call one of your other high net worth friends and say, hey, look, I'm going to fly 100 hours this year. You're probably going to fly 100 hours this year. Why don't we just split it down the middle, right? 50-50. We're going to both get access to the airplane relatively when we want to. And you're going to lower your hourly cost and maybe you have a depreciation need for that, et cetera. But really, it's about matching your trip and your mission, what I call a mission profile, to the actual aircraft, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think those are great points and great ways. We do that with families who are looking to relocate down south rather than going to relocate and just simply buying a home in an area that maybe they don't want to be in. we recommend maybe you want to rent a place for a year or a summer, or I mean winter or two, and figure out if that's the area you want to be in before you buy. Very, very similar, just on a much larger scale, because the last thing you want to do is make this incredibly large purchase and then find out that you're either paying way too much, not because you're paying too much, but because you're not utilizing it to its full capacity, or you want to take 7 people and you can only take 5 every time you go away. You don't want to learn it after the fact either. So I think those are great points, and thank you for sharing those. So